How's it going, Joel? Go ahead and take a seat. So the purpose for this meeting is to go over the 360 feedback surveys that we all took back in January. And for yours in particular, you had 5 direct reports evaluate you. You had 5 peers, 2 managers, and then yourself. So you had a lot of people evaluating you. So before I kind of give you the results of the survey, how do you think that you're doing then and now? Do you feel like you've improved on anything as well too?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as a company, we're starting to get more into our lanes, which helps me out a lot because I do feel like I wasn't able to do my job maybe as effectively because it was more of a free-for-all. So I am glad that things are changing exponentially.
Right. Do you feel that there are, before we go into the nitty-gritty, do you feel that you have certain strengths that you bring to the table?
Personally, I mean, I think I am a strong critical thinker. I think an area I do need to work on is, and I think it's something that I've just had to develop doing remote management so much, is touching both negative and positive feedback in different mediums than talking to you directly. I have to always go to a phone or an email or something like that because they may be 1,000, 2,000 miles away.
Yeah.
So it's just adapting to that, and there is a growth process, and I do feel like I am going towards that goal.
Great. Yeah, I think as we go through these results, you'll kind of see that what you just said actually mirrors a lot of what the feedback produced as well too. So kind of what I wanted to do is use this main sheet here as a guide and go through the points. I don't want to stare too much at it as the talking points, but I kind of color coded it in terms of your strengths, opportunity areas, and then other areas I'd like to bring up as well too. So if we just go down the list, when we do this drives results section, in terms of takes accountability, I actually saw that this was your highest rated characteristic. And yourself and your peers actually rated you very closely as well too. Do you think that this mirrors your own opinions toward yourself? Do you feel that this is one of the areas that you excel in?
Yeah, I do feel like I said, I'm still growing as a manager. So if there is a mistake, I am willing to hop on that grenade and take one for the team. Because if the team's not doing their job correctly, then it's on me because I was not managing them correctly.
And how do you feel that, in terms of overall personality traits, what do you think lends itself best to the feedback that you're seeing there, that strength?
I think it's confidence in my team, or teams I should say. Personally, I think a lot of times the teams don't get enough credit, and they are very intelligent, and maybe we don't give them enough, so I'm willing to go to bat for them and say that they are strong, they do have good ideas and whatnot. So.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think that's an area, that being your strongest characteristic, looking forward to other opportunities down the road, other characteristics in this 360 feedback. I think you should apply that to areas that maybe you rated either yourself or your peers rated you maybe a little bit, I don't want to say weaker, but maybe opportunities that you can work on, because I do feel that is one of your greatest strengths as well too. You go down to showing initiative. I think this is one of your stronger points as well too. I think that plays into what you just explained. We're a young company. We are young managers ourselves, and I think that is, in terms of taking accountability, that plays right into it as well. We have 2 other points here as well that were your stronger rated categories, and that being plans and organizes and drives efficiency. How do you feel that those 2 points are best represented by your day-to-day, how you do?
I mean, the efficiency thing, I mean, I would say, back to my original point, that the company's constantly growing, that I feel like I have helped develop new ways to make things work better, or make sure that things are getting done efficiently, as since we are a smaller company and we do a lot of work, make sure the tasks are still completed.
Sure.
I've also tried to take a lot more time to make sure that with the vast volume of communication via emails, calls, or Skype messages as well, like any sort of communication, make sure that it's organized so then I can follow up and use it at a later date.
Sure. What do you find overall in terms of the general concept of driving results? What do you find personally to be the most effective way of doing that?
I guess it kind of depends on the result. I mean,
Sure.
If it's getting student properties leased up, then I would say it takes a lot of, I mean, I guess regardless, it's just having communication and connections with the correct team. Because in operations, we do a lot, but it's also just working with all the other teams to make sure that everything is taken care of. If it's leasing, Jake; development, Gladden; HR, Cassandra, so, et cetera. So making sure that those people are in the loop and understand what's going on. And then in turn, making sure that the on-site is doing their job accordingly so that it doesn't make other people's jobs more difficult.
Sure, absolutely. I think the most effective points that you just identified for yourself too, and that's why these are your strongest points, are you are in a unique position where you're kind of the middleman per se in terms of a manager between our office and the on-site teams as well too. You simultaneously have to go to bat for the on-site teams while kind of having to maybe take the fall if the on-site doesn't perform up to a certain level. Yet you've already identified that we are a growing company, and I think that's where a lot of the opportunities lie. Mm-hmm. So really the strengths that you have, you can play into your entire portfolio of talents, and maybe opportunities that you have to work on as well too, opportunity areas. Mm-hmm. We'll go ahead and move into more of the fosters collaboration portion of the feedback. Communicates effectively. The red, as I said here, this is an area where you scored a little lower. This is actually consistent with what your peers and everyone else rated you as. Why do you think that maybe this is an area being identified as more of an opportunity area that you would have got rated a little lower?
Personally, I mean, I think, like I said, I'm getting better, but an area I do need to grow into. I was not initially used to the high volume of emails and whatnot, and initially it was overwhelming.
Sure.
But I've learned to adapt and file them away, establish priority better, and then address them in the order that they need to be addressed.
Sure.
So it's just a learning curve, understanding how much more communication there is at this level.
Absolutely. I know, kind of working in a similar role, there are certain situations that demand different types of communication. And specific examples, I know that, I believe that you've shown improvement, at least with collaborating with me, where maybe it's not so much a Skype, maybe it's not an email. Let's just go ahead and step aside for a few minutes and figure it out. And I think that in your role, again, as you said, you hold people accountable, and you have to, report to higher levels of the company too on behalf of the on-site teams. I think it's just a matter of taking where you're strong at, where we've identified, and playing into that. You've identified situations where you have certain situations that you need to communicate in certain ways. So I think that's a really good way of approaching this point, that being one of the opportunity areas we found here. Acts with courage. That's an area where you scored pretty moderately, I'd say in the higher area, and others identified that you did as well too. I think that plays into a very collaborative mindset. I think that demonstrates that others have identified you as someone that someone that holds other people accountable, but also goes to bat for them as well too. That being the on-site teams. The resilient point, that is something that you scored very high in, and it's something that is a slight blind spot because you rated yourself slightly higher than other team members. Why do you think that that's a higher rated category right there? I can say right now, before you answer that, you kind of answered your own question earlier. You have to work in an area of the company that is so volatile. Any day could be more hectic than the next. You know, things are cropping up all the time. Why do you think that you've been able to, you know, have a thick skin, for lack of better terms?
Honestly, I would say working in Milana.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd say those crash courses about as much as it could possibly be.
Sure.
Between just the substance abuse, the just condemned nature of that building. I mean, obviously University Towers and Westmar had their issues and whatnot, but I mean, being immersed in that and seeing just how horrible of conditions it was, I mean, I'd say that was probably the driving force to just like, well, something bad's gonna happen and you just gotta go from there. So.
Certainly. And that's great that you bring that up and identify that as a strong point. I think that, you know, at the time, you probably did not enjoy that very much. It was, you know, your entrance in the company just in typical Cardinal fashion, as we've all seen, hitting the ground running and learning very quickly.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, your situation and the fact that we were dealing with Section 8 residents there and that you were able to keep your cool and calm about you had to essentially tell everyone that they were out on the curb, whether or not they had a good situation waiting for them or not. Just always remember that. Always remember that you were able to handle that essentially on your own, and know that you have the ability to, in your opportunity areas, that you can apply that and that you can improve upon anything. So that's great that you're able to identify that, and you should be very proud of that as well too. I think another you know, blind spot we were kind of looking at here is think strategically. Although you're still up in the 3 area, is that something that really comes as a surprise to you? Maybe that you rated yourself a little higher than others?
Yeah, I mean, it does, but I mean, it's not a large enough variance to make me think that it's something where I'm just like, wow, I need to like totally overhaul the way I think. It might just be that I need to just be having more of an open mind to seeing how other people do it and then adapt accordingly. Use the way that I work, but then use other people as models as well.
Right. I think too that from this point of view, that communicating effectively and then think strategically, maybe just applying different methods to different situations as well too, as we've already identified, would be a big strategy to helping out with these 2 points. I want to move down to analyzes information, because at the beginning, this is one thing that you said that is one of your own strengths, and that's very good. Before I delivered you this information, you said that you're a strong critical thinker, and that plays exactly to what the results said. How do you feel that in terms of analyzing information, thinking critically, what are your most effective ways of being able to do that?
I mean, I think it's just frequency more than anything. Like, I don't think the number one thing that I analyze more than anything is probably the P&L and trying to understand where that comes from, so then in turn going to the GL or whatnot. So you're not going to do that by doing it once a month.
Right.
So I think the frequency and making sure that things are staying on top of it, understands like, why is this payment here as opposed to, or why are there 3 payrolls in January versus 1 in February, and things like that. It's just the frequency of staying on top of it and having a strong understanding of the information.
Right. I agree, especially having that accounting and operations relationship. I know that you've asked very good questions in terms of the financials and whatnot, and I think that's exactly what you need to be doing, especially being the person that prepares the performance reports every month, quarter, year. You know, you've asked very good questions like the payroll question, for example. I know we had that error with my own team earlier in the year, and there was a bit of confusion, but I think you demonstrated at that point the ability to A, identify the information, and B, identify a solution to it as well too. Especially since the subsequent month after that, there was another coding error that needed to get fixed right away, and you were the first person to bring that up to me. So I think that is just a testament to that being one of your strongest suits. Strategizes, you scored high, and I think this kind of plays into the effective communication and analyzing of information. It's just that I think you rated yourself, you did rate yourself higher than any other category here, where others kind of put you more down a few points. Where do you think that disconnect, I suppose, comes from? Why do you think that others maybe rated you a little lower than yourself?
It might be, honestly, because I've tried to work on this, but I have the tendency to just have the mentality to go, I'll just do it.
Right.
As opposed to working together. So, and I've definitely tried to work on that a lot. So, I mean, although I feel that I strategize well and have a plan in mind, I understand that people can't see that if I just go and do it solo, like a bull in a china shop. So although I want people to see that I do feel that I'm strategizing well, I can understand that it's impossible if I just do it on my own accord.
Sure. Do you feel that if you were to maybe place a little trust in other people and maybe not take so much on yourself, maybe it is tough to relinquish the responsibility of doing certain tasks? I think that holding people more accountable, which is a strong suit, and just placing trust in other team members would certainly even that out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And maybe just open lines of communication with your direct reports, seeing if that's a challenge they want to take upon their shoulders, or even Rebecca or someone you report to as well too. Keeping that open line of communication, I think in certain situations like blind spots like that helps even the gap a little bit. So I think that's a strategy you might try and employ to bring that more toward everyone kind of views that characteristic the same way. Finally, under thinking strategically, leverages change. This was one of, I just picked out here some of the opportunity areas. This was one of the ones that was a little lower for you. In terms of that characteristic, where do you rated yourself a little lower on that as well too? How do you view that as an opportunity area? How do you feel like you can improve upon that?
I think it kind of goes back into collaborating more, because you're never going to make big changes solo. So I think a lot of that is just working as a full team, and then much bigger changes can be made.
Absolutely. I think in terms of leveraging change, there's a few opportunities right now. I mean, we're about to switch information systems. Our company's always changing. Really, you identified one of your biggest strengths, and I commended you for the job done at Mint Urban back when it was Moana. I think that demonstrates massive change. That was our first dip into the common residential sector of real estate. I think if you take the mentality of the fact that you had to deal with so much there and apply, you had to post resident notices on their doors. You had to tell them that they were out. You had to deal with people that were on the lower end of society. If you could deal with the fact that you had to cycle them through that community, and the fact that you had to have such a thick skin there and apply it to this characteristic, I really think you're going to see a lot of change. And just know that you have the ability to up that characteristic, or at least your perception of it in others as well too. I think playing right into that is adaptable. I don't really need to go into that because I feel like it's a little bit repetitive from the previous one, but I will say that what I just told you as an opportunity area is exactly the way to approach that characteristic as well too. Innovates, I feel that that was a lower area, but it's also a blind spot as well too. So I think that's an area of concern. So I just wanted to, or not of concern, just of biggest opportunity. Mm-hmm. Why do you feel that innovates is a characteristic that maybe yourself and others rated lower, and then B, why do you think there's a big disconnect from maybe your peers to yourself?
I mean, again, it comes back to doing things solo. I mean, which is not the way to get things done. I mean, I feel like I do innovate things, but a lot of it was prior to Jake and whatnot, when I was taking care of a lot of the resin works and AMSI operation stuff, I would just do things and people just didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, Tom and I were running parallel, which is not the way to do things, but we were, and I would just put things in that made things better, but